Good evening and welcome to the September 19th, 2012 meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Committee. First item on the agenda is continued request for a hearing under a notice of intent. Owen Potter, 64 Irving Road, East Falmouth, for permission to demolish the existing single-family house and construct a new dwelling with an attached garage, deck and porch with stairs, outdoor shower, install dry wells, utilities, and associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until October 17th.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on the board? Any questions from the audience? Okay, hearing none. Motion on the table is a continuation to October 17th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Minutes. Has anybody read the minutes?
I did,
Maury has.
and I found them to be,
Which one? Are we talking
oh,
about
I'm sorry.
829?
No, I'm sorry, only on the 12th. I
I thought
apologize.
we did 829.
We did, I thought too.
We think we did 829.
Yeah, I think we did too.
912.
I found it to be correct.
Okay, you want to make a motion?
I make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of accepting the minutes as written? You've outdone yourself, Susan. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous, so moved. I just want to mention for everyone how lucky we are to have such a good recording secretary. We really appreciate it. Request for determination of applicability. Alan Sherrard, 29 Fells Road, Falmouth, for permission to cut brush, vines growing into trees, and remove dead branches.
Yes, Madam Chairman, the staff has reviewed the project and worked with the applicant. We are recommending -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries now confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on the board? Any questions from the audience? If any of you are here for an RDA, this was a negative determination, which means the person who requested it can go ahead with the work. And so negative is kind of positive in this case. All in favor of the motion on the table, which is a staff's recommendation for a negative determination, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Robert Barker, 364 Edgewater Drive East, East Falmouth, for permission to replace the existing timber deck and railings totaling 1,052 square feet, the second floor balcony and first floor stairs with PVC materials.
Yes, Madam Chairman, the staff has reviewed the project. We are recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries now confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Any questions from the audience? Okay. Motion on the table is to accept staff's recommendation of a negative determination. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. National Grid, care of Deborah Blanche, along Racing Beach Avenue to 99 Racing Beach Avenue, Falmouth, for permission to install a 2-inch diameter plastic gas main extension approximately 195 feet and within 2 feet of the roadway and through the existing driveway.
Yes, Madam Chairman, the staff is recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries now confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any questions? Any questions from the audience? The audience is happy to let this go since it's staff's recommendation is a negative determination. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you. We'll say that you looked alert while you were here. Anybody wants to know. Continued request for determination of applicability. Martin and Robin Murphy, 195 Great Bay Street, East Falmouth, for permission to upgrade with a new Title V sewage disposal system.
Yes, Madam Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until September 26th.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions from anyone? Okay, motion on the table is a continuance to September 26th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous, so moved. Request for a hearing under a notice of intent, Stephen Haddad, 190 Associates Road, West Falmouth, for permission to construct an in-ground swimming pool with patio, pool equipment shed, retaining wall to install infiltration chambers, native planting, and associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping.
Yes, Madam Chairman, the applicant has withdrawn the notice of intent request.
Okay. Okay, and Tom reminded me that I have to inform all of you that all hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are heard simultaneously under the authority of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. Robert and Rosemary Murphy, 23 Green Pond Road, East Falmouth, for permission to demolish the existing house and construct a 4-bedroom house with attached garage, deck with patio below, porch, install a concrete slab for AC units, new driveway, French drains, dry wells, native mitigation plantings, and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping.
Madam Chair, I need to
Court?
recuse myself.
Okay, Courtney's recusing himself. Susan? Okay. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'll save any of my questions until after Mr. Bunker's presentation.
Okay. Tom, good evening.
I'm Tom Bunker with BSS Design. We prepared this plan for the Murphys. Start out, say this property is entirely within the 200-foot riverfront area, some within the 100 feet and some the riverfront area, which the 200-foot riverfront area comes all the way out into Green Pond Road, as you can see on the plan. So the riverfront area, there's salt marsh and a bordering wetland along Green River. There's a flood zone associated with this inlet up to elevation 11. And through here, there's a slope, fairly steep slope, over 4 to 1, going above. So there's a coastal bank basically along the front of the house that rises up to elevation 18 and even up by the garage up to elevation 20. It's above 4 to 1, and then drops down here. The coastal bank does. And I show on the plan the various offsets, the required A and B zones for these resource areas. And the furthest landward A zone is the 50-foot setback from the coastal bank, which is this shaded A line through here. The furthest B zone is almost out at the road, the 100 feet from the coastal bank. So all of the lot is within the riverfront area and also either a 3 to 1 mitigation area or a 2 to 1 mitigation area. There's an existing house on here. It's a septic system that was upgraded about 2 years ago up in this corner, as far from the wetland as possible. And for those of you who went out there, you can see that it's in need of repair, rebuilding. What they propose to do is take it down and rebuild with new foundations on basically the same footprint, except that the garage will be rotated so that around this corner of the garage, the closer corner of the garage here is only 58 feet from the wetland, but it'll be rotated now, so that point is now 65 feet. So the garage is rotating and gaining 7 feet here. The closest point of the structure to a resource area is the door. Closest point of the structure of the resource area is this corner of the deck. In this location, it's 60 feet. And at this point, the deck wraps back around the house. The proposed house here will be 64 feet. Basically, the house is in the same footprint, except for what I've shadowed on here in the brown. There's an addition going toward the road here, an addition on the upland side here. Garage is being added to the upland side in this location, and there is a connector being proposed between the house and the garage. So I show on here, there's about 1,000 square feet of new structure I have down here from the lot coverage. And the mitigation calculations, there's 762 new square feet within the A zone and 383 square feet within the B zone. So when that's multiplied out, I have 2,700 square feet of new mitigation planting shrubs on the downhills. What I've done is put it all, so everything within the flood zone is to be planted, except for a 4-foot wide path that will be preserved to go down toward the waterfront in this location. So the flood zone and then somewhat extra up on this side will be mitigated. The architecture is to not have gutters. So what I've shown on here is 2-foot wide drip edges of the stone with steel or plastic edging, and 12 inches deep and 2 feet wide of this stone, which is actually probably more leaching capacity than you would get from the dry wells. It's everywhere along the house on the side where the roofs come down. There are a couple locations here where I do have some dry wells, because when you have a valley of some of the roofs, then you have to have some gutters, and so then we do have some dry wells. There's one in the front. There's one dry well coming down right by the corner of the garage, and unfortunately it's a little hard to see on this because of the way the scale plotted out, but be a drain pipe actually running down to inside this patio. The ground level patio here will be rebuilt but backfilled with this drainage stone, and have weep holes along the bottom of it, so that the drainage from that one roof valley by the garage will be carried around and put into that area, because it's just not a good location to put one of the dry wells on or near that steep slope. And I feel that patio, the foundation of that patio, will hold the water and will allow it to infiltrate. It's in the riverfront area, and under that it's supposed to be only 5,000 square feet of disturbance. This is already well over that 5,000 square feet. Did a brief look at alternatives. And basically, I mean, maintaining this location of the house, I feel, is good, because if we move it further away, it's true it'll be moving further away, but in this location we get more mitigation planting because there's more of the house within the 3-to-1 zone. So we're not disturbing anymore, but we're getting more mitigation planting out of it. So I feel that's a benefit for the riverfront area. If we moved it further out, way up to the road, there'd be more of the house in the 2-to-1 zone, and there would be less planting done. So that's why, basically, I think it's okay to leave it here because of the amount of mitigation that will be required in doing this. So that's our proposal. I'll take questions, comments.
Thank you, Tom. Jen?
Yes, Tom, a couple of things. Can you provide us with an existing conditions plan, just because this one's a little busy?
Yes.
And I need you to look at 10.5.8, CMAR 10.5.8. Oh, is that the worksheet?
It's the worksheet for the area. I can give you existing conditions.
Oh, no, this will work. If you want to just do a worksheet like this with the existing, that might be helpful. Can I keep this?
Yeah.
Thank you. Can you look at CMR 10.5.8, 5, which one did I want? Oh, E, where it talks about the 10% of the riverfront area and the degraded area, and degraded means structures, junkyards, lack of topsoil. So just the cleared area doesn't count as degraded within the riverfront. So if you could do that calculation and make sure that you meet that criteria, that would be excellent. And I think You'll need to take a closer look at the alternatives analysis and what's required under the Riverfront Act. It's almost an economic analysis, so, as well as protection of the riverfront, but you'll need to look at that and just provide a little bit more information regarding the analysis under the riverfront. Other than that, you're not moving any closer. I mean, you're right on that line with the existing structure. You're providing 3-to-1. So as far as the bylaw is concerned, it appears that that is, has been met. Are you proposing any mitigation for the trees that are being removed?
I don't have them on here, but
You might want
That's
to
one
have to
thing.
put that on and add some trees. One, for the amount of mitigation you're providing to mitigate for the trees being removed, particularly in the A zone when you're taking that
The cedar tree.
cedar out and that, what is it, 10-inch?
the pine, yeah.
10-inch pine, as well as the 4 or 5 within the B zone as well. Okay, and that's my only comments right now, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Who's down here? Michelle. I'm excited. Would you like to start?
Sure. I think most of the questions being covered, Tom. One, you show a concrete pad sitting inside the garage. I think that probably needs to be shifted, but that's okay. I think it still fits. Right behind the garage. You show the garage rotating with the garage
Your
going
air
in the
Yeah,
air.
conditioning.
the air
That's
conditioning, yes.
Yeah, that just needs to be, I think it still fits, so I think it's okay. Two, there would appear to be a couple docks sitting down on the back that would look like they go to your path. I want to be sure everybody's clear that we're not approving any kind of dock structure.
Mhm.
Okay. And the, I think you covered it with Jen. You're showing 1,000 or 1,100 square feet addition, and I'm just scaling things. I wasn't sure what you were giving as current covered area. I mean, some of that patio between the garage and is that included in the area today, or is it?
That's included as impervious area.
It's
on there.
included as impervious today. So if you provided that information, I think I'm clean.
Yeah.
Tommy?
No questions, thank you.
Michelle?
I have no questions.
Mine have already been answered.
Just one quick one, Tom. The grass path, it seems to be headed toward the widest or the deepest part of the salt marsh. And my question is, can it go to where the salt marsh is very narrow? Because obviously the path is to go somewhere, and I would assume they're going to the water.
It's to get to the edge. I mean, going through there, I mean, I had it here because it's where it's already grassy and cleared. So, I mean, the people who have owned the house before, I mean, only walk down here because there's no path going somewhere else. I mean, I see what you're talking about.
That was my major concern.
I can see it would just get into more disturbance of the native vegetation if it went to somewhere else.
But I guess then my question is, so where do they go after the path?
It was to get there. I don't know where they go after that.
Probably across
I
the
mean,
salt marsh.
stand there with a camera.
I know, well, I mean, that's the only concern.
Yeah.
They'll put a bench there.
I think the docks might be indicative that it might be, that they were going down to a little float or something. I don't know, because they weren't, but that was my concern. Thank you.
Mhm.
Would you like a continuance?
I'll need a continuance. I'll request a continuance.
Okay, let's negotiate a date. Jen?
What's available?
17th or
17th? October 17th? That's the next available one that you could meet. Is that too soon?
We are meeting Halloween, though, if you'd like to join us for that meeting.
31st, that sounds fun. Costume required?
Yes,
Costumes required.
yes.
So we don't, so
I'll take the
Better show up
17th.
in green.
He wants the
don't
17th.
meet the 2nd or the 10th. So
Right.
that's the next available
On
one.
behalf of the applicant, I propose to continue this to October 17th.
So second.
Okay, are there any further questions
And
from
if you
the
want to
board?
come in, we can talk about this.
Are there any questions from the audience? Last final words?
No, just,
I just said, if you want to come in like next week, we can talk
Yeah.
about exactly what I'm looking for.
no final words.
Okay, motion on the table is a continuance to October 17th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Owen Potter, 64 Irving Road, East Falmouth, for permission to demolish the existing single-family house, et cetera, is also going to be on October 17th. Continued request for hearings under a notice of intent. Joseph and Jean McCabe, 86 Eel River Road, East Falmouth, for permission to dredge approximately 90 cubic yards of sediment in a 40-foot by 80-foot area from Eel River and to construct a 4-foot by 104-foot long pier, install 12 10-inch diameter pilings, 6-inch by 6-inch posts, support timbers, decking, railing, and a terminal T-section 6 feet by 16 feet.
The quorum is all of us.
Madam Chairman, can we table this?
Okay?
Motion to table.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, we're tabling this. Don't let me forget it.
We might have to table the next one as well. I don't see Mr. Borselli. Oh, he is?
Are they,
Is Michael
all
coming
those
up
people
there?
were here, are they?
Is that Alden Lane?
Yes.
Yes.
They're up to, so I can get them?
Yes.
Well, would they like to have their hearing opened? That's their choice.
So we might be going back to the river.
Yeah.
We're gonna go back to Eel River after that one.
After all the,
Quorum for this.
are we doing all the?
We're gonna wait 2 minutes and then we're going on to
Which one's
Salt Pond.
So what happened with that one? Did they break it to me?
Yes. He needs to provide more information.
I told
What?
him, it's my project.
All of us.
I told him, you gotta, don't have anything.
Motion on table,
Yeah.
86 Eel River Road.
Second. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved.
We're gonna go back to Eel River. They just untabled it.
I did.
And I
I
seconded
made the
it.
motion.
Okay, we're back to Joseph and Jean McCabe, 86 Eel River Road, East Falmouth, for permission to dredge approximately 90 cubic yards of sediment in a 40-foot by 80-foot area from Eel River, to construct a 4-foot by 100-foot long pier, install 12 10-inch diameter pilings, 6-inch by 6-inch posts, support timbers, deckings, railings, and a terminal T-section 6 by 16 feet. Jen?
Yes, the quorum for this project is Tommy, Mike, Maury, Betsy, Tom, Michelle, and Courtney. Remain the same quorum.
Do you have any comments?
Not until after Mr. Borselli.
Good evening, Mike.
Madam Chairman, good evening, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Michael Borselli from Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. This is a continued hearing. On August 15th, we had an initial public hearing. You raised questions and asked for additional information. There was a comment letter from Chuck Martinson, Department of Natural Resources. And so we continued the hearing tonight. We made some minor revisions to the plans, and you received 12 revised plans in the appropriate time frame. And with the revised plans was a response letter from my office dated September 12th, and a letter from Jack Vaccaro of Vaccaro Environmental Consulting concerning issues related to the shellfish, potential impacts to shellfish. We revised the plans to add a resource area label, land containing shellfish. It was not on the plan. We also added to the plan a proposed siltation boom that would be on the landward side of the dredging area to help mitigate against any potential temporary sedimentation or disturbance during the dredging, which may cause an impact to the areas of significant shellfish, which are in the nearshore areas, not in the area where we're proposing to dredge. the area where we're proposing to dredge. And I'm going to state it from Mr. Vaccaro's letter. The area we're proposing to dredge is characterized with a substrate consisting of black anaerobic mud containing relatively few shellfish. In fact, only 14 quahogs and 1 razor clam were reported from the sampling in this area. Mr. Vaccaro also goes on to say that the proposed dock does traverse an area containing higher densities of shellfish that are located outside the proposed dredge limits. And this band of documented significant shellfish habitat occurs within a band that is approximately 50 feet wide as measured along the center line. And it's approximately 20 feet landward of the limits of the proposed dredging. So he's presuming that the area that Mr. Martinson makes reference to is this area. So in an effort to reduce the potential from dredging-related impacts, we're proposing to install the silt curtain, and we're also proposing that we limit the dredging operations to certain times of year and even certain tides. And we're suggesting, and I outlined it in my letter, and it sort of mirrors Division of Marine Fisheries expectations, that the dredging operations, and this could be, we would expect a condition, that dredging operations be limited to a time between January 15th and May 31st to protect against spawning winter flounder. And also, this is a recommendation of the Division of Marine Fisheries in their letter dated August 8th. We're also suggesting that you could condition dredging operations to times of outgoing tides and weather conditions that would not include wind-driven wave action and things that might cause siltation to go into the near shore areas. You also had raised a concern about what might happen to the area post-dredging because the material may be somewhat unstable and it could over time settle back in and not provide the required depth of 3 feet at low tide post-dredging. Keep in mind that we're proposing to dredge to 3.5 feet, and we believe that the area, because it's in a backwater sort of section of Eel Pond, will not, in the foreseeable future, re-shoal or resettle back to a water depth that would be less than 3 feet. However, to sort of mitigate against that possible eventuality, we're suggesting that you could condition a monitoring program where post-dredging we would do a post-dredging survey, and it could be immediately after dredging and then twice annually for a period of 5 years and report back the results. Sort of analogous when you require us to do beach nourishment profiles when we beach nourishment, however, so you can understand what's happening to the bottom. And if it's discovered that there's some substantial resettlement of the area and it's not remaining stable, then you would have an opportunity to respond to that, and perhaps if there were a need to come back to redredge, be in a position to deny it and not with the justification that it's not staying at the depth that's required. So the 2 letters are in your file. The plan revisions are here. We believe that we've satisfied the requirements of Falmouth wetland regulations and the state DEP regs found at 310 CMR 15, and we think that this is an approvable project.
Okay,
I'm happy
thanks.
to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mike. I'm going to ask people to focus your questions on if you have a question that you need any additional information to make a decision. Jen, do you have any questions?
I have no question.
You have no questions? Questions? Courtney? Michelle? Michelle, no. Courtney, no. Mike?
Would the applicant be, would the applicant consider postponing construction of the dock until we have a couple of half years of data to see how that dredging is working?
Half a year?
A couple rounds of sampling.
He said a
year?
couple of half years.
Yes. You know,
Couple of
just to get a
rounds of
sense
sampling.
of, is this thing working or not? I mean, my problem is you construct this thing and you come back and then you say it's not working. It leaves us in a kind of a silly position of having approved a dock that we don't like.
Good point. I'm not in a position to be able to commit to that. I'd have to speak to my client about that. He may be willing to perhaps look at a 6-month subsequent, post-dredging and then 6 months thereafter.
You see my point?
I see your point.
Yeah, you see your point.
So I can't commit to that.
That's fine.
so,
I would rather not keep this hearing open for
I
that
would rather not,
answer.
but is there some mechanism where,
We can discuss that.
okay.
If you're gonna do it, you need more than 6 months,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, if that's the way you're feeling, I mean, I understand your point. I guess you could mandate that the dock be removed.
It's never gonna happen.
We'll discuss it
You
in
could
deliberation. Any questions?
No questions.
Questions? Could I have a
I
motion
make a
on the
motion to
table?
close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second.
All in favor of the, before I call for the vote, is there any questions? Any questions? Any questions or comments from the audience? Final word, Mike? Okay. All in favor of the motion on the table, which is to close the hearing and take it under advisement, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Janice Smythe, 250 Alder Lane, North Falmouth, for permission to construct a single-family 3-bedroom house with attached garage, deck with stairs, install a paved driveway, walkway, dry wells, AC unit, singular nitrogen reduction septic system, utilities, native tree and shrub planting, and associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Request for variances under FWR 10.13 from the performance standards set out in FWR 10.307B, FWR 10.307D1B, FWR 10.185A1A, FWR 10.5A3E, FWR 10.187, and/or FWR 10.384D. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Let me just check with Jen, she'll give us the quorum, and then,
It's the same.
same quorum.
Same quorum.
Right.
Good evening, Brian.
Good evening, Betsy. Tonight, I'm here representing the applicant, Janice Smythe, who's with me here to my right. Also with me is Mike Borselli from Falmouth Engineering, Leslie Fields from the Woods Hole Group, and Teresa Sprague from Blue Flax Design. This was heard by the commission on August 15th. There were a number of comments and questions from the board, as well as from Mr. Crispin of VSC Group, who is representing an abutter in this matter. We have, I think, responded to all of those with some written materials from myself, from Mr. Borselli, and from Teresa Sprague, and those are all part of the record. What I'd like to do briefly is to touch upon one of the themes that seemed to come from the board, and it came, some of it through the chair, was to try to design a house that was as small as possible. And so what we did was, after the hearing ended, we discussed possibilities, and with the client's instructions, we have substantially redesigned the structure. And you're going to hear the details from Mr. Borselli in a minute. But what I want to focus on is section 10.13.2A2 of your variance provisions. And what that section says is that the applicant must explore alternatives that would allow the project to proceed in compliance with your regulations, and then explain why each alternative is unreasonable or unrealistic. And so I think the last time we were here, the board indicated they wanted a smaller house. So we went back, and I want to explain that there are two outside collateral requirements that are applicable to us that we have to comply with that are in the background here. One is one the board is familiar with, which is zoning. So we can't be closer to the front yard than a certain distance, side and rear. The other is that this subdivision was created in 1968 before there were any wetlands provisions on the law books. And the developers that created this subdivision recorded what are called covenants. And I'm sure the board is familiar with those. Very often they read things like no clotheslines or no boats parked in your driveway. This particular set of covenants has a minimum house size requirement. Specifically, it says that if there is to be a two-story house, it must have at least 2,250 square feet of habitable space, and if it were a single story, it has to have 1,400 square feet. The applicant did approach the association and asked for relief from those provisions to have a smaller house, and she was denied. She also asked the association if it would support a request for a zoning variance, and the association said no. So what you see before you is a house that will be a two-story house that will have a first floor of 1,018 square feet, and a second floor will have 1,232, which has the bare minimum size of 2,250. And we actually did the math, and a two-story house actually presents a smaller footprint than a single-story house. So we have the smallest possible footprint that will be allowed by the covenants. Regarding the regulation, we contend that it is unreasonable or unrealistic to require the applicant to have any smaller of a house, because if we were to propose one, and if the board were to approve it, the association has what are called equitable powers. It can go to court and stop us from building it. And so we would submit to you that it's unreasonable and unrealistic to require us to go beyond, or below, I should say, the absolute minimum that these covenants require. I probably will have another comment or two before the night is over, but I think at this particular point, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Mr. Borselli to give you the actual details now of the new house and compare and contrast it against what was presented the last time. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, again for the record, Michael Borselli from Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. We have made several revisions to the plan to address the issues and concerns raised by both the Commission and BSC Group through Mr. Crispin, representing an abutter. And I'd like to simply go through the revisions and explain to you what has changed and how it has further reduced any potential impacts. First and foremost, we've already basically discussed the fact that we reduced the footprint as much as we can. And by that reduction in footprint, we have taken the original footprint for lot coverage, which was 1,947 square feet. These numbers are in my letter, by the way. The original design had a...
You can just sort of summarize this, because
Yeah.
we have this material.
Sure. The original lot coverage was 1,947 square feet. The new design reduces it to 1,260 square feet, which is a significant reduction in actual footprint lot coverage. A much larger portion of the proposed structure was on the coastal bank itself, meaning from the top of the bank seaward. The original design had 823 square feet of that footprint occupying the coastal bank. The new footprint occupying the coastal bank is only 147 square feet. So that's a significant reduction. It's about 676 square feet of reduction occupying the coastal bank itself. And we were asked to see if we could find ways to further reduce the number of trees that we're cutting. In the original design, there were 19 proposed. The new design, we reduced it to 14. We've done everything we can to save every possible tree or prevent them from the need to be cut as part of this design. And that translates into a caliper inch comparison of originally 220 caliper inches to 156 caliper inches. And the final comparison of the two designs with regard to the changes in the reduction is the original design was set back 81 feet from the salt marsh. The new design is set back 91 feet. So we've increased the separation from the salt marsh to the structure by an additional 10 feet. There was some suggestions in the letter from the VSC group that the design did not meet FWR 10.38. And in my letter, I suggest to you that it does meet the requirements of FWR 10.38. FWR 10.38 requires you to take into consideration sea level rise. And if it's in a velocity zone, you're supposed to consider a 2-foot sea level rise over the next 100 years. The current design is in the previous design, for that matter, was such that the first floor elevation of the house is elevation 22.5. The referenced elevation for the velocity zone is 16. If you were to add 2 feet to 16, that means you need to design for that reference elevation of 18. So the first floor elevation, being at 22.5, is still 4.5 feet above that prediction, taking into account sea level rise. As we've discussed, this is actually a walkout style structure. So there's a lower level to the structure. And the lower level is set at elevation 14. You asked us to provide more information on this. We provided you with a cross-section on the plan that generally describes the typical elements of the construction of this house. That being where the first floor is, where the lower level is, where the actual portions that would be frost wall foundation outside the velocity zones, in full height foundation wall on the street side, also well outside of the velocity zone, and then the portions that are in the Falmouth described V zone, not a FEMA V zone, but even still designed to be open piling as is allowed in your regulations, 1038 4D2, open piling, no enclosure. That portion is also shown. Now the lower level is set at 14. The lower level is not habitable space. The Massachusetts Building Code only allows those lower levels in flood zones to be for limited storage and as a means of access in and out of the building to make way up to the second story or the actual first floor habitable level. So there's no requirement for that level to be considered when you look at the requirements for sea level rise found at 10.38. And I can tell you that this commission has reviewed numerous projects with walkout style structures that have lower levels that aren't habitable space. The Town of Falmouth Building Department, through the Building Commissioner Eladio Gore, have issued building permits, so they concur with our opinions on this. Many houses along the waterfront, because of sloping landforms, were built in this way. So we believe that we conform with FWR 10.38. The BSC letter also makes suggestions and makes reference to issues related to Title V and the Town of Falmouth Board of Health regulations for the design and placement of the septic system. And I would like to again reiterate to you that we acknowledge that there were certain provisions of Title V in the Falmouth Board of Health regulations that did not meet the standards and required relief. That's why we went to the Falmouth Board of Health initially, applied for the variances, were granted the variance relief. Those variances, that variance is still active. It was in your file. So we believe issues related to septic system referenced in the letter are handled by the Falmouth Board of Health and the provisions of Title V. And we acknowledge that the DEP does have an opportunity to review this project. There's one specific requirement from a DEP variance, and that is the minimum separation from the leaching field to a coastal bank. And we acknowledge that we require that variance, but the timing on such variance is not now. And I'm going to allow Mr. Wall to elaborate on those provisions in a little bit more detail. But what I can tell you is that I've had numerous conversations with DEP through the Southeast Regional Office, Brian Dudley, and Mr. Dudley has indicated to me that when they review these types of variances, they rely on the order of conditions in deliberating over the variance. What does that mean? That means that they're deferring to the Conservation Commission for issues related to what potential impact the leaching field could have to the coastal bank. And if the Conservation Commission reviews the project with regard to impacts to coastal banks due to installation of the system, meaning the digging of the hole, the installation of the components, the backfilling of it, if the Conservation Commission is going to have an opportunity to review and issue an order of conditions and come to a conclusion as to whether or not those operations would impact a coastal bank. And the presumptions of significance for a coastal bank relate to the function of a coastal bank to provide storm damage prevention and flood control by being a vertical wall to floodwaters. In this case, the house itself is between the coastal bank and the septic system. And the excavation for not only the house, but certainly the septic system will not prevent the coastal bank from continuing to function and protect those interests. So we believe that it's appropriate not to apply for that variance at this time, but we have every intention to apply at the appropriate time when there's an order of conditions issued. And with that, I'll turn it over to Leslie Field. I believe is going to speak a little bit about some of the issues, and then Teresa Sprague.
Thank you, Mike. For the record, I'm Leslie Fields with the Woods Hole Group, and I'm just here very briefly tonight just to talk about issues related to the coastal bank. As you heard from Mike, the project has been scaled back, so whereas before the house was over the coastal bank, not really on it, but over it, elevated over it, 823 square feet over the bank on piles, and now we've reduced that to 147 feet over the bank, still on piles. The only part of the project that's touching the bank itself are the piles. So we've reduced that by 676 square feet, the part of the project that's over the bank. And I just wanted to remind the Commission that the bank is significant because it's a vertical buffer to stormwaters. It's not a sediment source, so the characteristics of the bank that are critical to maintain as a result of this project are the height, stability, vegetation, and natural resistance to erosion by wind and rain runoff. The project maintains all of those critical characteristics now as it did before, and I have a letter in the file from before that speaks to each of those characteristics and how the project maintains those characteristics of the bank. So the other thing I wanted to speak to were what was a point in the BSC letter, point 3 on the pending FEMA maps. So there was an assertion made that the new FEMA maps are coming out and that there could be changes in the flood zone boundaries as a result of those maps. We know in our office, because we work with FEMA frequently and the contractors that do the work for FEMA, that those maps have been, the release of those maps has been postponed. We do not have a date for when those maps are coming out. However, having said that, we've had the benefit of looking at the preliminary maps, and in this area, there are no changes to the flood zone boundaries or the base flood elevations. So the A zone, the V zone is still elevation 16, the A zone is still elevation 15. And then one other thing that was asserted in the letter is that that the extent of flooding will be pushed landward because there's going to be a large modification along the 15-foot contour. But that's not true. The 15-foot contour on the other side of the house is going to be in exactly the same location as it is now. So there won't be any more landward intrusion of floodwaters than there could be now if we have a 100-year event and the floodwater actually does reach the 15-foot contour. But that's only during the 100-year storm event. That's still seaward of the proposed house. So I'll turn it over to Teresa. Talk about the landscape plan.
Teresa, just summarize any changes that you want us to.
Absolutely, yes.
focus on.
Teresa Sprague, Blue Flex Design. Just very briefly, Mike already reviewed the reduction in the number of pitch pines that we were going to propose to remove. Based on comments the board made at the last hearing, we took a second look at that, made some changes to the plan in order to save 5 of those pitch pines. 14 pitch pines totaling 156 caliber inches will be removed. However, we will be replanting 27 trees, so that's a 2-to-1 ratio, between 6 and 3 caliber inches. Again, listening to the concerns the board had with the plant community and trying to restore a plant community that's currently existing, we added pitch pines to the plan, along with red oak, eastern red cedar, black tupelo, serviceberry, and American holly, totaling 96 caliber inches. There was certainly a question of how we could add those trees and fit those trees in. With the reduction in the footprint, we were able to add more trees to the plan. The trees that I'm counting here are only those that are proposed up near the foundation that's shown in the insert on this plan. In addition, the areas shown in tan that are outlined are the areas proposed for invasive species management, and there's a list of trees and shrubs that would be planted in those areas to restore those areas once invasive species were removed. Again, the question of mitigation planting and the numbers as far as the square footage of mitigation planting versus impervious surface certainly comes up. The areas that are shown in shrub planting and ground cover layer planting in the lighter green in the insert total just about 1,700 square feet. However, if you consider the areas where the invasive species are, where the areas are most heavily degraded by invasive species, where we're proposing to literally remove all the vegetation that's there, which is mostly at this point Asiatic bittersweet, and restore those areas, we're looking at more than 10,000 square feet of mitigation. And again, that's if you consider removal of invasive species and restoration of high-value native species in those areas as mitigation. So I'll be happy to answer any questions about the plan.
That's all right, we'll wait for questions to the end.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, I just wanted to address one more issue which was set forth in the BSC letter, which is where Mr. Barcelli left off. The BSC group has made 2 different assertions about this DEP variance requirement and whether or not we need a variance from your section 10.03. Essentially, what they're saying is that we haven't asked for the variance from DEP and then somehow our application is procedurally deficient. But that's not the case. As you heard Mr. Barcelli say, DEP likes to have the order of conditions in hand when it's reviewing that application, and therefore they would consider our application maybe not legally premature, but on a practical level premature. There's another requirement that we're complying with, and that is under the State Wetlands Act and your local wetlands protection bylaw, we're required to apply for, let me back up, obtain or at least apply for all obtainable permits that are required by local bylaw, not state permits. And so we're not even required to get that variance yet. The other thing the BSC group says is that we needed to request a variance from section 10.03, and we would respectfully submit that that's been misanalyzed. If you look at your variance provisions.
We know that.
Okay. It's really a simple matter. If you have a septic system that is cited in compliance with 10.03, a presumption kicks in that says the septic system doesn't present any adverse impacts to wetlands interests. If you don't have it cited in that requirement, you get the opposite presumption that there will be adverse impacts unless you can overcome them. And then the bylaw and the regulation gives us specific guidance on what we need to show in order to do that. And if you look at Mr. Barcelli's letter when you're deliberating this, there's a sentence in there that says, and he opines, that there's no more significant or cumulative effect to the resource area values of the bylaw than one which would have met the setback requirements. And in that case, in other words, if you can show the septic system is no more adverse than
We've
one
had a number
compliant.
of cases like that.
Well, we submit that we have overcome that presumption. And that's our presentation. We're available for any questions.
Okay, thanks. Let me just ask the board if there are any other questions that you need to know, any other information that you need to make a decision. Jen, did you want to ask any questions?
No, I can review the tape for the answer to my question.
Okay. Court? No. Michelle?
No.
Mike?
No.
Thank you for all the new information.
Tommy? Nope, thank you. Okay, let's put a motion on the table.
I make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second.
Okay. And now I'll ask for, I think there may be people in the audience, I'm not sure, who have questions. Okay, motion on the table is to close the hearing and take it under advisement. If anybody wants to add any other information, actually, we'd like you, no, you can come up. But if you have anything specifically about what they asked,
About what they just,
Right.
the issues just raised.
to see if we need any more information. We
Um,
feel we have enough information to
I
make a decision.
feel you do have enough information. I don't think you need any more. We've responded to,
Yeah, you have to
the-
tell us who you are.
I'm sorry, my name is Joe Clark.
Right,
I'm
I
one of the
remember who you are
abutters.
from the
Yes,
last
forgive me.
time, but-
I'm still not used to this whole process.
Right.
And I have a representative who's already actually been introduced, Dave Chrisman from BSC, who can respond to the issues raised. Again, it comes back, in my
Right.
simple view of it, it's a coastal bank and it's a salt marsh, a 100-foot setback and a 50-foot setback. I'll let Dave respond to the
Yeah, I think
specific issues.
we understand what your arguments were, and we understand what their arguments are, and now it's time for us to deliberate,
Okay.
unless,
We do have some relevant information, I believe, that we'd like to get into the record.
okay?
And, Madam Chairperson, we would have submitted this earlier, but we only were able to get the documents on Monday, compile the response, and here we are tonight. Otherwise, we would have turned it in on soon.
So you have to give them a letter too. You have to tell us who you are again.
Dave Crispin, BSC Group, civil engineer and land surveyor. We did go down and pick up the package Friday afternoon at Falmouth Engineering and have had a chance to look at it. I have a couple of comments. I'll let you read some of them, but the history regarding hardship that was proposed by Troy Wall Associates made me curious, and through the wonders of the internet, we just went and looked at those cases that were referenced as being relevant. Both of them were zoning decisions. Myself, as a civil and land surveyor, I'm not sure if the zoning act is relevant to home rule as far as definitions. You folks have a definition of hardship. And I do know that pretty much every case is unique in its own way when it gets in front of a zoning board. I'll let you read this, but you will see that they're really very different animals, and I think the commission needs to be.
We're familiar with doing
Yep,
hardship,
yep.
and we understand
Just
the
want to get
arguments they made.
want the letter in the record, really, and I'm not going to take a lot of time. We heard tonight that the basement is basically non-habitable space. 7-foot, 6-inch high ceiling with concrete floors and walls, with a wall across here, probably with windows. In my opinion, probably meets the definition of habitable space. And if you want to call it storage, that's one thing. But there's some other problems with that. We heard tonight that the elevation 15, elevation flood line was not moving. I'm going to trace the elevation 14 line. 15 is the flood line. 14 line is going to come down into the house, around. When this thing floods, the elevation 15 is going to be a foot of water in here. In essence, the coastal bank and flood zone is going to move forward. Just want to point that out to you folks. And when the sea rise in that level, there's 3 feet of water in there. With this petition, a wall across here, 3 feet of water against it with waves, don't think quite meets the definition of storm damage prevention. I don't think it's going to stand up, and I didn't see anything here that said it was indicated to be anything that would support that. There are some small issues. The rain garden is shown on the landscape plan. It's not shown on the grading plan. You're on a 12 to 15% slope, and you've got to dig a hole. I would think that should be shown so you know how that works. Another interesting observation. On the site plan, there is a note that says door here. If there's a door, there must be a wall. I heard tonight that this was a pile-supported structure, but the plan says door. Just leave that for you. There's still some other technical issues. They said the drainage calculations were one thing. The recharge pits still haven't been sized in accordance with the drainage calculations. I don't think I need to go into all of these details. One other interesting thing on the cross-section, the slab goes to this wall that I talked about, and then out to the edge of piles. So now you have a pile with or without a wall with a door with a concrete slab that's a foot below the floodplain that they have now. This floodplain is going to come in, hit a smooth concrete surface, and run at the building. I don't think that meets your standard as far as planning for the future and sea level rise and whatnot. Title V question, it's a real quandary. You are tasked to presume that the thing meets the presumptions. And
we have these cases all the time.
There's a whole
We
bunch
hear
of them.
100 cases a year, and probably 15 have to do with that issue.
So, I mean, those are our points. We just want to get them in the record and
Okay.
have a response, and thank you for your opportunity.
Thank you. Mike. Okay.
I want the record to show that that door label is a typographical error. There's no door on that building in that location. That is open piling construction.
Okay.
So there's no door. And there's no enclosed space proposed in the Falmouth velocity zone. And I forgot to mention, Commissioner West wanted us to look at the RAL method, which we did, and we submitted those drainage calculations. She also thought it would be a good idea to provide a berm on this edge of the driveway, and we also did that.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Okay, are there any further questions? There's a motion and a second on the table to close this hearing and take it under advisement. Okay, all in favor of the motion on the table, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? You with me, Susan? Okay, unanimous, so moved. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to open the next 3 hearings together. And they're at 3 different sites, but the proposed work is similar, and if there's anything site-specific, Jen will keep track of that for when we write up decisions. Okay, the first is Salt Pond Area Bird Sanctuaries, care of Brendan and Annette, Buzzards Bay Coalition, Gunning Point Avenue, map 3710-017-002, 3710-017-001, 3710-010-068, for permission to control and manage invasive plants in degraded salt marsh habitat. The next one is the 300 Committee, care of Brendan and Annette, and that's not Brendan there, I know Brendan's here. Buzzards Bay Coalition, Sipawizet Road, map 3706-002-000B, 3706-005-002, 3706-009-000D, 3706-011-009, and 3706-012-010A for permission to control and manage invasive plants in degraded salt marsh habitat. And the third is Salt Pond Area Bird Sanctuary, again, care of Brennan and Annette, Buzzards Bay Coalition. Wood Neck Road, map 3606000068 and 3606000069, for permission to control and manage invasive plants in degraded salt marsh habitat. Jen, do you have any comments before we begin?
Any questions or comments prior to Dr. Payne's presentation?
Do you have the green cards, anybody?
I do.
Okay, and good evening, Dick.
Good evening. I'm Richard Payne. I'm representing the two owners of the three ponds, salt pond areas, bird sanctuaries, is the principal owner of Woodneck Pond and Gunning Point Pond, and 300 Committee is the principal owner of Flume Pond. We propose to control Phragmites in all three of these. We will use the same contractor who's been used in several places in the town, namely Little Sippawisset Marsh, the marsh on Quaker Road that the 300 Committee owns that was worked on several years ago. And I understand from Chris Politan that he's done a little more fine-tuning of his techniques, and they're even more effective than they were before. We treated this as a single project and raised funds for a single project. We have raised most of the $90,000 that it's going to cost, and that's principally from 23 contributors who are either abutters or neighbors of the ponds, and we also received a $10,500 LIP award from the State Fish and Wildlife. I don't know that there's anything I can add to what's in the packet right off, but I'm certainly here to answer any questions.
Yeah, we've seen this and we've worked with you through the years on developing a protocol, but
Right.
let's see if anybody has any questions. Jen? Courtney? No. Courtney, yes?
Yeah, I'm the site officers. Even though you presented most of the materials, would you briefly describe how you plan to approach this, just for the record? I mean, I know that it's all in there, but...
Okay, yeah. Chris uses three techniques. Chris Politan, who's the principal in Politan Ecological Services. If the Phragmites is quite dense and there's little native vegetation in it, he uses backpack sprayers with a special low-flow spray head on them. Goes in at dawn when the wind speed is at a minimum, monitors the wind speed, and treats the Phragmites. Now, when there's more native vegetation and there's danger of overspray onto the native vegetation, he uses one of two other techniques. One is he calls the glove technique. Put a rubber glove on, cotton glove on top of that, dip it in the glyphosate solution, grab a couple of stalks and run it up. Sometimes he uses the sprayer to apply it with the glove held behind it to minimize the overspray. And the third, where you're really in tight quarters with excuse me, a lot of native vegetation, he uses the cut and drip technique. You cut it off, you cut the Phragmites off waist high, and you drip a couple of drops of the glyphosate solution in each stalk. And that's pretty inefficient, but sometimes you have to use it.
In some areas.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Just a couple of other things. A lot of the Phragmites, and in particular, I'm familiar with the Woodneck Pond. Unlike the project you did on Sippawisset Marsh, where most of the Phragmites control was in areas where it was essentially ground underneath. In other words, you weren't in the water. The Phragmites weren't in the water.
Yeah.
What sort of control techniques do you do there? Are you going to do any cutting ahead of time, or how's that all going to work?
I believe that Chris does not plan to cut beforehand. I know he's worked in ponds before.
He's worked in an oyster pond.
Oyster Pond, although that was around the edge too, but I know he's worked in
Some of
deeper
that was
water
underwater.
in western Massachusetts, in other ponds where the Phragmites was growing in water that they had to get into. So I think he has developed his techniques to take care of that.
And then your obviously, you've got a 3 or 4 year plan to monitor this and come back and do all that. One of the interesting things that I've observed with the Sipawicit project is that the control of the Phragmites have been very effective, and in the last 4 years, the native vegetation, including the cattails and the like, and grasses, have all come back. And it probably will be another 3 or 4 years before it's fully vegetated with natives. But one of the things that has struck me is that where you see the most active revegetation or reoccurrence of Phragmites is in that transitional zone between the wetland and the upland. In fact, what happens is that the Phragmites tend to migrate up, and they sort of hide themselves in amongst the natives. And I'd be interested to know what his plan to control that is. My observation has been that sometimes he's waited a little bit too long in the fall before he comes back and does his spot control. And I think he should plan on like a late August time frame for his continuous, his coming back and doing it.
Yeah.
Other than that, I have no other comments. I think it's an appropriate thing, and my observations of what has occurred in previous projects has been a real benefit.
Thank you.
Michelle?
No questions.
Mike?
No questions.
Tom?
Have fun working.
Maureen?
I just had 2 questions. One was, there was an old order, Jen, for Flume Pond. They put a new, they put pen boards in, probably back in maybe after Hurricane Bob. Okay, and we might want to just look at that, because I remember in the order of conditions, I can't actually remember if it was an RDA or a notice of intent, but they were supposed to control the flow through there, and to be honest, I don't think anybody's touched that thing for years.
The flow into the pond from Buzzards Bay?
It was actually between the 2 wetlands. It's been a long time, but I think
Okay.
it was like I think it was right after Bob, like maybe. So anyway, you might want to look and see in that file, because there was a lot of discussion about keeping the flow between those ponds. The other question I have, first a comment, I went out to Little Sipawicit Marsh, and I was probably one of the most skeptical when we had the hearing to allow that project. And I did keep an eye on it off and on, and I went out the other day, and I was highly impressed with the success out there. The natives are coming back, the Phragmites is definitely almost gone. So I'm hoping this will be as successful. The one thing that I don't remember if it was in the old file, but possibly in the endangered, with the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, the Gunning Point Pond has and I can't read it because the one thing that you gave us was the DMF, and it's really small. So,
That's all I had to work with.
I know.
Sorry.
But what is that grass that is endangered?
It's called salt pond grass. It's Leptocloa musca.
Okay, so how are you gonna protect that?
Well, tell you the
I mean,
truth,
you're gonna mark it out before you spray?
If there's something, if it's native vegetation like a grass, then, and you can see it, then I think Chris will not wind up spraying in that area.
Oh, I don't think we will
He'll
want
use
to either.
he'll use one of the other techniques.
Okay.
It's probably been overgrown.
Yeah. Well,
Hopefully the seeds there's a seed bank in the
And
bud,
that-
and it'll come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just, when we condition this, that it would be located, or if it is located, that it's protected or marked off, so you can use a different method to protect it
Yeah.
instead of the full-blown spraying.
Right.
And I do hope that there are more areas in town that will get targeted.
We're working on one now.
And then the last question I had, that you can maybe make sure, Chris, and we'll probably put this also in, that the Audubon Society, and I'm not familiar with this at all, but the project should comply with the new NPDES pesticide and general permit requirements, and I just want to make sure that he knows that, because I'm sure he does, because he's a licensed applicant.
Yeah, he
but-
does, and we have a letter from Mass Audubon approving of the project.
Oh, I know, I have
Yeah,
that.
okay.
But they're just,
Okay.
they want to make sure that you're aware of the new regs, so I'm sure he is. but that's-
Chris, yeah, my experience is Chris stays on top of things.
Okay.
But that's,
And
it
we'll
won't
probably.
hurt to put that in the,
And if
in the
we-
order,
Yeah.
just to make sure.
Sure.
And if we follow some of the old, if we have the old, maybe we could put the little Sipquisite Marsh into the record, only because we could work off of that with the drift and all that for the findings. And remember, we had the wind had to be at certain, and all, 'cause
Yeah.
we don't need to get into all that tonight, but
Yeah.
it definitely worked out there and you did the
Yeah.
right thing, so we'll just
Mhm.
make sure we do it again.
Okay.
Okay,
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
just for a point of order, if we could have the gentleman's name that gave the answer for that. just for
Brendan
the
and that.
record.
And the applicant, Brendan and Ed.
Thank you.
That's why I was surprised when I looked up. And I
Make a
read
motion to close.
Brendan's name 3 times.
Make a motion to close and take it out of advisement.
Okay, we have a, can you wait just 1 second? We have a motion to close it and take it under advisement. Do we have a second?
Yes,
Yes.
Mike seconded it.
Mike? Okay, are there any questions from the audience? Sir?
Yes.
You have to come up and tell us who you are.
My name's Tim Kloffnoff. I'm the son-in-law of one of the abutters, Millicent Bell, of 30 Woodneck Road. And, well, one question was, why were the Woodneck ponds listed as degraded salt marsh when they're freshwater ponds?
Well, sometimes they're salt marsh and sometimes they're freshwater. It depends on whether the barrier beach is broached or not.
Well, yeah, that doesn't happen too often. I mean, generally, it's a freshwater pond with frogs in it and small fish and other things. But she just sent me here. She couldn't be here tonight. She had a letter voicing some concern about the application of chemicals to the freshwater pond
Yeah, and I
area.
believe, did you give us, I mean, isn't the letter in our file? I believe I saw that letter. But if
Someone
not-
may have forwarded. I can give you a
If
copy.
not, you can give it to us, and we'll put it in the file.
Yeah, she just wanted it to be on record that she did have some concerns about, the benefit versus the risk of applying the chemicals, although, she does understand they do degrade, and Richard Payne did pay a visit and explained the process that would be used, to eliminate the Phragmite. I can read the letter, or you can.
Sure, well, you
take
can
it.
read the letter if you like, or we'll put it in and we'll read it in deliberation, but you can read it if you like.
Sure.
1 second, sir, could you repeat your name for the record?
It's
Susan?
Tim Foffenoff.
Could you
F-O-F.
spell that, please?
F-O-F-O-N-O-F-F, 4 Fs like Frank.
Thank you, thank you.
I'll skip the first paragraph. Having been away, I only received notice of this hearing this weekend and have not had sufficient opportunity to review the plans for the project. My review to date, however, leaves me with concerns that the process to eradicate the Phragmites from the pond may do more ecological harm than good. As I understand it, the proposal calls for an initial foliar spray application of the Dow Chemical Company herbicide rodeo and non-ionic surfactant called Sidekick 2, to be followed by a more targeted and direct application of the same substances. Although I understand the applicants are stating that the rodeo is EPA generally approved for aquatic use, it is incumbent upon the Commission to ensure that this is true, and that the application of these particular products at this specific site will not endanger the fragile ecology of the pond. As with all projects involving the application of herbicides in wetland resource areas, the Commission must review the potential toxicity of the substance on non-targeted organisms within the pond. The plant, animal, and bird life surrounding the pond depend on these organisms. And if an unintended consequence of the application of these herbicides is the destruction of these organisms, the result would be catastrophic to the ecology of the pond. The narrative accompanying the application identifies 2 project goals, one being the eradication of Phragmites, and the other being an improvement of the viewshed aesthetics of the pond for the enjoyment of the abutting landowners. As one of those abutting landowners, I can tell the Commission I am more concerned about the ecological stability of the pond and the important wildlife it sustains than I am with any perceived improvement of my view shed. I urge the Commission to carefully review the chemical composition of the substances proposed to be used, how those chemicals will affect non-targeted organisms that dwell in the pond, and whether the proposed application process is adequate, and whether any unintended effects of those substances could have on the ecological health of the pond. Thank you for taking time to consider my comments. Millicent Bell.
Yeah, thank you for presenting that to us. So could we have it?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay.
I actually just had one quick one. You just handed me this? Is
Yes.
this for the record?
Yes.
And that there was an alternative, which I didn't know, because I just read this.
There's a
Okay.
further part to that,
Okay.
which I don't think Jen said,
So,
which is
we
that
could maybe
only-
condition which herbicide they use? Or are they only using rodeo? Or can we deliberate
We
on that?
can have that
Okay.
discussion.
Okay, thank you. I haven't read it all yet, so I don't really know. I'll read it, and when we deliberate, I can.
Yeah, you can talk with
Yeah.
Chris, Jen. Okay, there's a motion and a second on the table, close the hearing and take it to close 3 hearings and take them under advisement. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Okay, so those 3 hearings were just closed.
Jen, I'm gonna put this in the one with the green cards, because there's only one copy.
Now we have Jean and Joseph Sanger, 32 Valley Road, Falmouth, for permission to construct an enclosed porch and deck, install utilities, dry wells, native mitigation plantings, and associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. We're waiting for a DEP number and something else.
Waiting for a DEP number. Commissioner Schmidt had noticed that the cesspool was still on the plan and that was taken off.
Right.
And she also moved the limit of work closer to the house as the board instructed.
Oh, yeah, this is Barbara. Doctor,
So,
remember
the
this?
form for
Yes.
this project is
Michelle's not on it.
Dr. Payne, Tommy, Maury, Betsy, Tom, Ed, and Courtney.
Sir, would you just peek out and tell them,
Thank you.
tell them I might be coming next?
Scary.
And I told Barbara she didn't need to be here tonight because they're very simple.
Right. Could I have a motion? Unless anybody has a question with what Jen just said.
I make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you, sir. I'll borrow you more often. Request for hearings under certificate of compliance, Nantucket Sound Trust, lots 3 and 4, Davis Neck Road, East Falmouth, requests that a certificate of compliance be granted for seawall construction under DEP 253682.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I would, this request came in as a result of a discussion I was having with the applicant's representative regarding some reservations I had about a certain aspect of issuing this certificate of compliance. I did talk with Pat, and I'm working through that with the applicant right now. It's all on track. Basically, I'm just waiting for a performance bond letter for a monitoring program on the property. And once that happens, it will be on the table to sign. So at this point, I
So we
spoke
just
with Bob.
continue this, and then maybe we can just...
Yeah, I talked to Attorney Ament this afternoon and told him what I was going to state to you. He's just waiting to get me that letter. So,
Okay,
if
let's
it feels
get-
comfortable, why don't you just continue it till next week? And then by that time, you know.
Is that enough time?
Oh, yeah.
Make a motion to continue till next week.
Second.
Okay, motion on the table is to continue this Nantucket Sound Trust.
Plans are in. I'm just waiting for a monitoring program to be submitted.
Okay. For a week, we have a motion, right?
Yes.
And a second? And do we have any comments from the audience? Okay. We'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you. Continued request for hearings under certificate of compliance. Robert Haggett, 400 Acapesket Road, East Falmouth, request to allow in-ground irrigation system to stay in place under DEP 253737.
Yes, Madam Chairman, the applicant has requested a hearing for the board to resolve this one issue that's holding up compliance. We have been on site with them numerous times regarding the plantings. All the planting issues have been resolved. The property looks quite nice, but there is an in-ground irrigation system, and the staff felt that we could not issue compliance based on the current stance of the board regarding these types of systems. The only option available to the applicant was to request a hearing to speak to you themselves. So
Okay.
they're here.
Are you here? Are you the applicant?
Yes, ma'am. I'm Bob Haggett. It's my wife Susan, and
Okay,
we are the
good evening.
owners of 400 Acapesket. We had written a letter to the commission last week. I trust you have it. Just to highlight, and thanks Jen and Mark for their help and her summary. We have worked with you to deal with the issues on the property that go back to 2009 when we first got started on the project. And with their help, we've dealt with all the mitigation planting issues. And we're stuck with an issue that is related to the dating of when we got started on this project and how we went about it. And it relates to the irrigation system in the backyard. And if I would just highlight the dates, we started this project. We've been in town as property owners for a long time, but we were lucky enough to buy this property in 2008. In 2009, working with folks from town, we got started on the project, and we got underway with the commission, and your order was issued in November of 2009. The project moved forward. We finished the project the next summer in July of 2010. The mitigation plantings were completed in 2010, in August of 2010. At the same time, the irrigation system was installed in the backyard. We continued on the project. While the construction was done, the mitigation plantings were done. We had one issue that there was an old dock on the property that we had to remove certain pilings that we did the following spring. And then our engineer submitted the first request for completion, if that's the right word, in July of 2011. We then heard back from Mark in March of 2012, and that was the first time that the irrigation system had been mentioned. Our order is silent on it. It doesn't speak for it, and it doesn't speak against it. It's silent on the issue.
So my question to you is, was your original plan, did you have an irrigation system on it? Did you ask for permission to have an irrigation system?
We did not. It was not on the plans. It's not in the order either way. At the time, it was on our understanding that the practice in town was that irrigation systems were installed and they weren't in the order of conditions.
Well, irrigation systems to us are part of the construction process.
I can't speak to that other than as the homeowners, we completed the project with the advice of the people that were helping us all in town. And again, we wouldn't, if it were 2012 and we came to you, we wouldn't have applied for it.
Well, I can tell you there's certain people in town who would still tell you you could have it. And I can tell you who they are. But in fact, we have people, we'll ask people, do you have a pad for your AC unit? Do you have your shower? Aren't you going to have an outdoor shower? Oh, yeah, well, that has to be on the plan. And if you had asked for an irrigation system in 2009, we would have said no. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm sure you did it in good faith, but there's a reason we don't have irrigation systems for these areas. We allow a drip system to get the mitigation planting started, but the requirement is to have native vegetation that doesn't require irrigation.
We've planted, we submitted plans with the specific plants. We've planted those plants. In some cases, we've replanted those plants. So our intent is to comply. We're here with a dating issue. We've been done for 2 years. We've been trying to get this resolved for over a year. And that's why Susan and I are here tonight.
Okay, I'm sympathetic, but not so sympathetic that I would go against what the requirements of, that I feel the requirements are. So, I understand, I'm sorry people get caught in this, and unlike some of my fellow commissioners, I know that a lot of people don't understand what the wetlands rules and regulations are. Having said that, there are a lot of people who know quite well and then choose not to comply with them. I don't think you're in that category at all. I think you got caught innocently, but it's, we have to apply the law and the regulations fairly throughout town. So, Courtney?
Yeah, this is a tough one, and I understand, that you didn't have anything written in, but your landscaping plan that you submitted for approval, or was submitted for approval by your agent, should have included an irrigation system. I mean, that's the whole purpose of a landscape plan, or a site plan. That it specifies all of the different things. It specifies where the plantings will go, what the amount of plantings are. It specifies in the order of conditions the type of lawn that you can have. And the lawn, and we're very specific, and have been that way for a long time. We talk about Falmouth-friendly lawns. We talk about planting drought-tolerant fescues on at least 8 inches of loam. And that's done for a reason, because those fescue grasses are designed, will survive drought conditions in the summer. The lawn goes down dormant and it turns brown and looks kind of ugly, but comes fall, when the rains come, it comes back. And so, and therefore the need to irrigate is no longer there. Yeah, of course, when you get any lawn established or any plantings established, you're going to have to water them frequently, and you may want to use temporary drip hoses and that kind of thing. And the commission has always conditioned or allowed that kind of thing when it's been asked for, because we understand those things take a while to get established. But this has been our whole thing. We're very concerned about the leaching into the groundwater, and when you have a lawn and there's fertilizers, all of those, that nitrogen leaches in, and then we've got problems with our ponds. And so this is why the rationale behind it. And I fully appreciate that you've got a situation where you now have a finished deal and you've got this system in, and that to pull it out is going to make a mess, or potentially a mess. I'm not going to pretend to offer you suggestions as how you can get around that. I mean, there are ways to do it so it's not terribly invasive. And that's for perhaps for your landscape designer or your irrigation person to come up with a solution that convinces us. I know one suggestion was that we temporarily disable the thing, but I think the problem is that becomes a monitoring issue for our staff to see that happen. So if the system is disabled in some way fully, even if the pipes stay in the ground, but the system is disabled to the point where it's non-operable, and you can do that, then you have to present that to us for us to decide on.
Tom?
I don't recall exactly when this issue didn't become clear and became very gray. I don't remember us discussing a whole lot. I know we've had a lot of discussions, but the specific...
I can clarify that for you. we've never allowed these. About 3 or 4 years ago, certificates of compliance came in, and they weren't allowed because they had these systems. And so we didn't allow them. So then we said, well, how can we overcome this? Because it's a problem when you get to certificates of compliance. So then we specifically said in the order of conditions
And
that they're not allowed. But we hadn't allowed them before.
All right, but there's that, and I like the moccasins you're wearing. I'm putting on the other side, just as a, trying to understand, this is not the last one that we're gonna see. We're gonna have more of these because of that time frame that the applicant is familiar with, is that some perceive as a gray area. In this time, just a question for the applicant, if I may. How much of the system is in jurisdiction? 1/3 of the system, half the system?
Jen, I would say probably half.
The jurisdictional line goes up to where that big spruce used to be on your property, correct? Right around that area?
It's probably the A flood line there, isn't it?
No, it's up there. Remember the big spruce that was on that you
Yep.
took?
So then it would be less than.
I think that was the line. I'm not sure off the top of my head. Do you have that? Do you have the plan right there?
Yeah. Thank you.
And that's going off the top of my head. I might be wrong. How close was that? It's pretty close. The spruce was around here somewhere. I think
So
that
it's up
was
here,
right.
the jurisdictional line is up here.
Yeah. Well, I was way off. So, yeah, so that
Goes,
part.
I remember I know where your house is now.
Yeah.
I remember it.
You like this property.
Yes, I did.
It was very
And I
good
do.
property.
I like the
It goes through your deck.
The zones that are down there, were they set for the mitigation plantings and then also for lawn as well?
Yes.
Okay. I just, it's unfortunate that we're so backlogged. The timeframe that you've been pursuing this is long, and that's no reflection on staff, because I know that there's a lot to, staff has been overwhelmed with a lot of things. And I'm going to get off my soapbox.
Okay, does anybody have any other comments? No?
I have information.
Okay, do we want to, should we vote this next week? Should we close this hearing and vote it next week, Jen?
You can.
Okay, well,
I
let's
make a
close.
motion to close and take under advisement.
Second.
All in favor of the motion on the table, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Next week, we'll vote on this.
We're just hoping to get direction. Jen was not able to make the decision, so we're here tonight. We had hoped that we would resolve tonight, one way or the other. The commission's here, the staff's here, the applicant's here, and so.
Well, you want us to take the vote? We'll close the hearing and take it under advisement. We can take the vote tonight.
Realizing that, okay. Make a
Would
motion.
you rather have an answer
Make a
tonight?
motion and take a vote on the
We
compliance.
would normally not take a vote on a hearing, but this is just one particular question. You see what I'm saying? I'm not saying it so much for you, except for you to understand. In a normal hearing, like for your house hearing, we would never close it and then vote that night, because we want a chance for people to go back and look at the record, and then we'd deliberate the next week. But, so.
Keep your normal process. I would just, whatever you can do to get us to a conclusion, that would be great.
I'd like to make a motion to vote the compliance.
I'm only saying that because
We already
closed
took
the
a vote.
compliance hearing and took a vote last week on
Yeah.
the same exact issues, so.
So let's just take
It
it.
would be breaking protocol to do it tonight on one issue.
So,
That's all I'm saying.
All right, so we can vote on it.
We can
We'll
vote
just
on it.
Be
We've already
consistent
done
with
this.
last week.
All right.
I make a motion to vote on the certificate of compliance regarding the irrigation.
To vote how?
And we always have a positive motion.
Okay, that's what you have to
You
say.
put a positive motion
Put a
on the
positive
floor
motion
to
forward.
issue the certificate of compliance.
Correct,
I'll
thank you.
second that.
Okay, the motion on the table is to issue a certificate of compliance as the project now stands,
Keeping the sprinkler.
keeping the sprinkler. Right, what's in the ground right now? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
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 4-3. The motion did not carry. So at
Okay.
this point, Mr. and Mrs. Haggett, you do not have a certificate of compliance. The resolution to that would be to remove the system somehow and return to us with a request for a certificate of compliance. That's what their vote meant.
You're allowed to have the system not in our jurisdiction. So if you have a system that has stuff out in front, between your house and the street, then you're allowed to still have that.
Right, as we move forward, I would just hope that you take into consideration the disruption of shutting down the system. So we'll do it, we'll work with Jen, we'll do it in a way that we can do it so we don't have to remove the trees, we don't have to damage the trees on removing the system.
Well, you didn't have to damage the trees to put it in, did you?
They weren't there at the time, ma'am.
Ah, okay, we'll work with Jen in a way that's best for the environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enforcement issues, JEV Realty LLC, care of Joy Volke, 375 Sherwood Drive, East Falmouth, for clearing and altering wetland resource area and in buffer to resource areas as defined in FWR 10.00 and 310 CMR 10.00.
Yes, Madam Chairman, Mark is working with the applicant's representative on this project. So they have requested a continuance for 1 week, so they can meet on site and go over everything. So there already has been one meeting. They're still working on the issues, so.
Make a motion to continue for 1 week.
Second.
Okay, any questions? Okay, motion on the table is to continue this enforcement hearing till September 26th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All- A late aye there. All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Continued enforcement issues, Black Beach Harbor Head Association, William Resnikoff, Stephen Doyle, Lawrence Lynch Corporation, the entire length of dirt roadways for Little Neck Bars Road, Black Beach Hills, and Drift Road, West Falmouth, for unpermitted work within a resource area buffer as defined in FWR 10.00 and 310 CMR 10.00.
Madam Chair, I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, you discussed this last week. You broke it into 2 parts, one the association, one the contractor that was involved, which was Lawrence Lynch. The board voted to issue an enforcement order to Black Beach requiring, the homeowners association requiring them to file a notice of intent within 4 months. And then at that point, if that deadline was missed, the board would consider more severe action as funds. As far as Lawrence Lynch, the board asked me to go and talk to town council about the potential of imposing fines against the company for the work. It's not as simple as yes or no answer and how much you can do that. It's based in your bylaw in the Wetlands Protection Act, and the ability of this board to impose that through the Wetlands Protection Act. It's something that I still need to have an additional conversation with town council and DEP on. So at this point,
We'll
we're
continue
going to
till next
have
week?
to- I think it's gonna be longer than that, but it may have to wait until I get back.
Okay.
But at this point, I don't have an answer of what you can specifically do. Like
Okay.
said, it's
I
a
know,
bit-
I
it's a
talked to
bit
town
more
council also on
complicated,
this. It's a lot
than-
more complicated.
Yeah, it's a lot more complicated. So that's a discussion, Madam Chairman, I believe that you, me, and town council need to have so we can present a very clear direction to this board. And that's just something that the information I just don't have.
Right, so
now.
let's have a continuance until October, what's our first October?
Don't have the first week I get back, so it would be,
17th?
17th?
that's the first week I get back.
Yeah,
24th.
October 24th.
I do believe there might be people in the audience that may want to address you.
Okay, well, I just want to put a motion on the table.
I'm sorry, I wish I had more information, but as you know, it's a bit more involved than just when and where kind of deal.
Yes.
I will put a motion on the floor, but I just want to make a comment that,
Well, now put your motion and then make your comment.
then I will do so. I'll make a motion to continue to October 24th for the enforcement issue discussed.
And could we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Tom, your comment. And if you gentlemen are waiting, or you in the back are waiting, then I'll give you a chance. Don't think I'm cutting you off.
I just do not, and I can't say this clear enough, that I do not want this to end up being something real muddy at all.
We don't want it to be muddy either. That's why we
Okay,
need to
and-
clarify things.
And I'm just gonna voice this, sometimes when you have multiple meetings with council and just the verbiage being used, I'm suspect of something, when you say it's not that clear and it's, it's just, I have reservations. I was not part of these discussions, and I am just putting it out there that I think that this can be resolved simply, and that's
Well,
what
Tom,
I'm looking for.
I just want to make it clear
You asked me
that
a
when
question.
you've asked us to go to council, when we go to council, we don't make a deal. We come back with how they've explained things to us, and then we discuss as a board and make a decision.
And I'm grateful for that. And yes, we did ask for council's guidance. And yet, now we are going to have another, now, just setting this enforcement issue all aside, we have had other enforcement issues in the past that we've had council give direction with that still have not been resolved. And I just don't want to, and I'm saying this, putting it out there, if this is something that we're going to deal with, I just want to deal with it in a timely fashion.
Oh, I understand that, Tom, and if I can get the answer for you next week, I would be happy to. Unfortunately, after that, you're not meeting for 2 weeks, and I will be out of town, so.
Okay, well, I appreciate the effort that's been gone in, yes.
I
It was
called
under
them
our direction
absolutely
to.
the next day, or I called Monday, so, I did talk with them.
Thank you.
I will try to get a resolution or an answer, either way, to you as quickly as I possibly can. And if you'd like, you can continue this to next week, and I can try. But I would hate to just keep bouncing it along specifically because I don't want to inconvenience the parties involved having to come here every week, waiting for an answer that might not come. So I think just giving me that opportunity and that time is, I know it brings it out a month, but it's.
Thank you.
I don't want to have these poor gentlemen come every week looking for an answer.
Well, speaking of these poor gentlemen, would you like to speak? Tell us who you are and what you might want to say.
Yeah, my name's Chris Lynch from Lawrence Lynch Corp. This is Jonathan Croft. I don't have anything if this isn't something that's going to be discussed this evening. However, we are certainly willing to, without weighing enforcement or not enforcement, we're certainly willing to discuss the episode, so to speak, or the situation, if that would be helpful in advance of knowing whether enforcement or not enforcement is an option.
Okay? I could make a comment to you.
You're welcome to.
And that comment is, since your name is Chris Lynch, I'm assuming you're an owner of Lawrence Lynch.
That's correct.
I'd like you, and I think you realize this reading the article that Brent wrote, to instruct all your employees that if there's ever a doubt as to whether there's permission to work in conservation jurisdiction, that doubt is cleared by talking to somebody in the conservation department.
Yes, and that is exactly, as I put my comment yesterday to the newspaper, was that is what that is one of the things that we apologize for, is that we didn't put greater effort into recognizing, does the customer in fact have permits applicable for this job? We trusted that he did, and we got a little confused between customer-client relationship as opposed to us and compliance, and again, we apologized for that.
Yeah.
And we'll certainly pay closer attention to it.
Yeah, I mean, you do a lot of work in town, you do a lot of good work. You rebuilt my neighborhood's dirt road, and we're very pleased with the result. And I know you do normally do it, but sometimes things, down the line, sometimes, as somebody I worked for once said, people need to be reminded how to behave.
Mm-hmm. With safety compliance, with environmental compliance, with all those things. And we do make it a point to do just that. And it's why we probably haven't been here before, because we do pay attention to those compliance issues.
We appreciate that.
Thank you. I think if any of your project managers, foremen, they can always just give me a call and my cell phone number
You mentioned
available to
that.
them.
You mentioned
And
that.
I'm
And
happy to
certainly
talk
if
to
there's
anybody.
confusion, we will
That's fine.
do that.
Thank you, Chris. I think
Okay.
it's very helpful that you're here and address the board.
Yep,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Well, thanks for the time.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to say something?
I do. I just want to say one quick thing. I'm Jonathan Croft. I work for Lawrence Lynch. I was the project manager on site the morning of the incident. I was able to watch the meeting from last week via the camera on the internet this morning, and I was a little taken by that everyone kind of thought that we knew well in advance that the permits weren't in place, that we knew we were going in as whereas we shouldn't have been going in. It's really not how it unfolded. I think
Well,
just
yeah, maybe that's how it came to the audience.
right,
It didn't-
and I think in the
I
morning.
understand what the sequence of events, I think all of us understood what the sequence of events were.
Right, and I think there's a little bit of a blind side on the respect from the client, will say, kind of got us in there, and I kind of put together a timeline. Now, I can go through the whole thing with you via email conversation and so on, and it kind of gets us right up to the door of us showing up on the job site, and then Tom showing up that morning, explaining to them in conversation with the owner and the owner's rep, and that was the first knowing that they did not have the permits and the compliance in place for me. Outside of that moment, I did not know this was going on. And it was at that point when Tom very clearly expressed himself to them. And then Tom left, and then I was again directed just to go ahead and grade the road. So I don't want to, I think the board looked at it in advance of us being there, knowing that this was wrong.
We understand, but what I'm trying to get across to both of you is if there's any doubt as to whether you have the permit.
Yeah.
Unless you've seen the permit.
Right. And I'm never in the situation.
You have two choices. You either say to the people who are asking you to do the work, well, let me see you have the permit? Let me see the permit. Or if they say, oh, they told us it was okay, which I know people say, then call the office.
Right. And that was part of the step that was missed on my behalf.
Okay.
No question about it.
It was a learning experience, wasn't it?
Absolutely. My first one. No, I mean with the conservation, not in general.
Right. We'd love to see you. We'd love to see you here again, but not under these circumstances.
Absolutely.
All right.
Jonathan.
If I may, I want to thank you personally for coming down here. It was uncomfortable to start this for many reasons, but I am very grateful that you came here on camera and addressed this. We have others who have had enforcement issues levied, who have not been as courteous and responsive as you are. So I want to thank you personally for doing that.
That's it.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Okay, thanks very much.
I want you to just hand up.
Yeah,
Courtney, you have his hand up?
Yeah.
I just want to kind of add to what Tom said, and your firm is highly respected, and you've been in this town for a long time, and I think I've done a lot of good work, and you're a good corporate citizen and a good citizen of the town. And I think that's what troubled us as much as it did, because this seemed like it was out of character for you. But as Betsy said, sometimes people need to be reminded. And the key thing here is that, when we issue permits, there's a paper trail. And when you guys are doing work in an area where there's a wetland, or even if you think there's a wetland, and somebody says, well, you've got to ask, you've got to see proof before you start the job. Simple as that. If they can't produce it, there's a phone call. And I think that's a lesson not only for Lawrence Lynch, but every contractor who works in this town doing anything. You get an order of conditions, you gotta understand it. As a contractor myself, I always insist that any subcontractor doing site work on the job has that order of conditions and fully understands it. Because it's his reputation and his license and all of that, as well as mine, that's on the line. That's one of the things I think you guys gotta bear in mind and take out of this.
Actually, when you issue a permit, it's a requirement that it be on site.
Absolutely, an order of condition needs to be required. And I think the problem is if there was no order of conditions, there would be nothing left on site.
Well, RDA's.
Or RDA, and there was no RDA. There was not even an administrative approval, which is also in the form of a letter. None of those things existed in this situation. So, sometimes homeowners are very enthusiastic and are quick with the, oh yeah, it's fine. But you gotta, hopefully you guys will put the machinery in process that says, oh, it's fine, isn't fine until you can see a piece of paper.
Or
Always err
okay.
on the side of caution.
Okay, I believe we have a motion and a second on the table. Susan, is that correct? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table for continuance to October 24th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for
Thank
coming,
you for coming in.
sitting through. And I might call you again, Chris. You did a good job silencing those people.
Yeah.
Trust me. All right. Vote orders of conditions. Are we going to do that next week?
No, you're going to do it this week.
Okay, Peter Bennett, 344 Quistit Avenue.
This was the reconstruction of that accessory building into a, hang on, farm.
Wake me up. Wake me up.
Tommy, Maury, Tom, Courtney, and Betsy. You remember, Maury, they switched the limit of work to protect the maple. They added a limit of work on that steep slope. They provided the cut and fill caps. They redid the line to the septic tank to avoid the trees. So basically, they took all the special, they made what the board wanted to see as special conditions. They revised the plan to show those.
Yep.
So it's a straight order. It'll add your Falmouth-friendly lawns, your irrigation, site cleaned. I don't believe there's any species planting involved with this.
Anybody have anything else to add?
I would just reiterate on that steep slope, where that wall's gonna go, that they keep an eye on that limit of work.
Yeah.
I make it just a special
Yeah,
note,
between
'cause
that slope and the locust, yeah, I know, yeah. I
Not
know
that much
exactly.
activity is going on there, but that's all.
Can you
Okay.
tell us who's on the forum?
She did.
Oh, you did? All right, then I'll
Make
take
a
a motion.
motion to approve as written and discussed.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Richard Romanoff. 10
Yes.
Fiddler's Cove Road, North Falmouth.
But let me double check. I worked that out, I have no idea.
See, this is ill.
Tommy, Maureen, Betsy, Tom, Courtney. I was right.
Okay, this is the
That was-
mitigation planning, right?
This is the extra plantings, and small revisions to the plan so that 10 Fiddler's Cove can come into compliance.
I make a motion that,
And you, I know, you wanna make the motion to go?
You know what I want to say?
I know what you're gonna say.
The man wanted to be able to walk along his wall.
And I have
think
no
he should
issue
be
with
able to
that.
walk along his wall.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
Yes.
fine with me.
yep.
well, just so we can keep an eye on
Yeah.
maintenance or whatever on it.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
have no problem with that.
Yeah, just a little bit of gravel.
Yep.
Have a little gravel path.
That's fine.
Okay, motion?
I made a motion to accept as written discussed.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved.
I make-
Motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All, any opposition? Unanimous, so moved. Maury, Tom.
Did you need something? I would like to make an appointment to see you. If I can do that.
You most certainly can.
Together, one position.